of interviews.
Where'd y'all shoot that? Do you recall?
It was in downtown Atlanta. I just thought Smashing Pumpkins was an allusion to something taking place around Halloween.
There you go.
Didn't realize.
Really?
Not only that he would be one of the biggest stars and
huge rock
huge,
star.
but also own a wrestling company.
Yeah.
But that was just me thinking it was a Halloween-y place to cut a promo.
I like it. Speaking of Halloweeny, a guy who came trick-or-treating as Yoshi Kwan lost in 3 minutes and 38 seconds to a double-arm DDT. Yeah. It's a little weird to see that, his winning streak comes to an end before the pay-per-view.
Before the pay-per-view, right.
Either way, you beat him and you move on. The creative is lacking a little bit. You're writing in your book that you're only given one live interview to build up to your match with Vader. Meanwhile, Dusty's giving himself a bunch of airtime.
No, was I being tough on Dusty?
You were being tough on Dusty.
I love Dusty.
But I think, in that era, that's really the way you felt.
Well, this was also the, even before Watts came in, there was a lot of pressure on the powers that be to build up the Omni into the Madison Square Garden of the South. So that Dusty may have been talking specifically about a guest referee spot he was doing. I was always bewildered at the idea that we had national, I believe it was international TV, and yet we would spend so much more time. And this wasn't a Dusty thing. This was a TBS Turner edict. Like, we were going to build up this venue that's no longer even there.
Right.
To be the MSG of the South. So I don't want to be, and you could tell by the way I talk about Dusty, right? Dusty gave me a huge break.
Yes.
I mean, when you're sitting, remember, this is the first memoir outside of Adrian Street, who wrote his own memoir, where the guy is actually doing the writing,
Yes.
me. And I mean, there's a lot of solitary late nights. There's playing. I was writing wherever I happen to be, but you're reliving these. I do it. When I talk about writing, I go like I don't never go like this. I was always writing. It was almost like I was hunched over, and I'm reliving these moments. And there was some frustration coming through.
Yes.
But man, I was a little tough on the dream. Sorry.
Well, that's okay.
Love the guy.
I do want to ask you about your visit with Eric, because you start to get a little nervous when you see the booking sheets and you realize that it doesn't feel like you're figured in. And you referenced what was happening at the MGM shows, and you're not on those, not the way that you imagined you would be. And so, as I understand it, you have a sit down with Eric where you would write in your book that you came up with like a really professionally printed, almost thesis.
Boy, it was.
With,
About 20
with charts
pages thick.
and graphs and
charts
stats.
and graphs. And at that point, ratings were the be-all and end-all. We didn't have 15-minute breakdowns, but the closest I could come to proving that I could draw was by showing the Sunday night main event ratings over the course of the 6 weeks that I did my angle with Vader and how they'd continued to grow. Because I remember going up there, I don't think they sent the check to you. I think you had to go get your check at CNN Center. And I went up there, and I've talked about this before in different contexts about there was a sign that says home of the, whatever the rating was. It was a big rating for the Harley's Kong guys,
Yes.
They did a one-time big rating. So the ratings were the deal for WCW. And I printed it up and I sent it to everybody I could think that had some clout. And again, when I was writing about the idea that, wow, I'm low six figures, I'm thinking I'm going to jump from 156 to 250.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to get the 400 like I think Rude did. I'm not going to get that, but I've got my eyes set on 250 after 3 years of hard work, or almost 3.
So do you schedule an appointment with Eric's office and then bring
so
him
this
a
would have
copy?
been over.
And you bring a copy?
I think I sent them out.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly. And so it had been 2 years at that point, but the contract was coming up.
Yeah.
It rolled. So yeah, the contract would be coming up September, October, because it came up every year. It wasn't like a WWE 3-year deal. It was renewable every year, and I thought that going into this thing, I've got a reasonable shot to pick up a raise. And then when I see where it's going, I was like, man. even before Bill Watts came in and, did his best to put the kibosh on a lot of salaries. The fact that I stayed at 156 meant he loved me, right? Yeah, so I saw that stuff kind of, some of my dreams and hopes going by the wayside.
You wrote that Eric tells you there's no money for you. Are you guys face to face?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think I'm in his office.
And he just says something like it's not in the budget?
I think so.
And just to add context, you're in the middle of this big angle with Vader. You're about to headline what he thinks is their biggest pay-per-view of the year. They've invested all of this money, a substantial sum. And I know that gets lost sometimes, but if you factored in the production costs of all of these vignettes, had they simply not done them and just given that money to you, you would have had more than what you were asking for.
And I really think injury, comeback, fiery promos,
yes,
money.
Yes.
I said, during the build-up, one of the Manias, where it was clear when Brian invited Brian Danielson, Daniel Bryan. I can't remember the exact matchup, but back when I was more frequently critical of the product, maybe because I was watching much more intensely, I said, sometimes you just want a great steak. You don't need all the you don't need all the sauces and accompaniments. It's like we had a great steak. Like I said, angle, comeback, promos, match, and it was, we got béarnaise sauce on there. I'm overdoing the.
I just find it fascinating to me that they're telling you it's not in the budget. This is the same era where they're spending all this money on these mini movies that Cedillo was putting together.
Yeah.
And now all of these vignettes, like if they, and they admit it wasn't working.
Right.
And they ask you to get them back on track, and you do. But now when you ask for a raise, seemingly roughly $100,000, which is less than they just spent, or more than what they just spent. You know what I mean? Like,
well, here's what I said, and I've mentioned this in my live shows, is that they worked themselves into a situation where you couldn't be a top guy unless you made top guy money. You couldn't make top guy money unless you were top guy. So they had their handful of people who were their main events, and they pretty much had to go with them.
yes.
And so I got that little 2-3 month period there where it looked like I might be a main event guy, but no one was ever going to give me main event money there, nor were they going to give it to Steve Austin or Dustin Rhodes. So I wasn't or Pillman, right? Or Pillman did end up getting the big raise, but that was also a few years later. But I knew I wasn't factored in, because you show someone what they mean to the company by what you pay them.